Shalom, this is Yair Davidiy. I'm speaking to you from the West Bank, from an area in Judah, from one of the regions that the Jews liberated from the Arab occupiers, and that all the world is dancing around about. I'm speaking to you from the center of one of these regions, and I'm pleased to be able to do so, and you should be pleased to be able to hear me. And today we're discussing aspects of the characteristics of Ephraim, of the tribe of Ephraim. Ephraim was one of the tribes of Joseph. Joseph had two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. And we find the tribes of Joseph amongst the English-speaking peoples. The English-speaking peoples, we find them in the Isles of Britain, and Ireland, and the USA, and Canada, and Australia, and New Zealand, and South Africa. And that is where the English-speaking peoples are to be found. I cannot say that everyone in those regions are descended from Israel. We can say that in those areas is where most of the 10 tribes were settled. That is amongst English-speaking peoples and their related nations in Scandinavia and Western Europe. And that amongst those nations, the English-speaking section received a predominant influence from Joseph, from the tribes of Joseph, and that the USA came to be dominated by Manasseh. The USA has attributes of the tribe of Manasseh, even though that quantitatively there may be more descendants of Ephraim in the physical sense in the USA than of Manasseh. The USA has given expression to attributes of Manasseh, as we shall discuss when we come to it. We are now discussing the attributes of Ephraim. And Ephraim, we find Ephraim not only physically but also according to the characteristics that he gave expression to. We find Ephraim amongst the British, especially the English, but everywhere else, Scotland, Wales, Ireland, there are also people from Ephraim in those regions as well, but especially amongst the English. And also we find Ephraim in Australia, New Zealand, and to some degree Canada and South Africa. And they have attributes of Ephraim, and we're going to deal with these attributes as they come, as not necessarily in a logical sequence, but as they come to us, as we will discuss them. We're going to give you a lot of different points of view, a lot of different information from different sources, but all of this information is going to enable you and us to form a composite picture of what an Ephraimite is, or what someone descended from Ephraim tends towards, and if we resonate with this picture or not, whether we are possibly from the tribe of Ephraim or not. But you will see that even if we decide we're not from one tribe but we're from another, we will learn to recognize the attributes of specific tribes in people who do have them, even though they're not part of us. This is an interesting study, and you'll see for yourselves it's worth listening to, worth learning. We too are learning as we go along. So one of the attributes of Ephraim, the word Ephraim connoted an aristocracy, an aristocrat. Someone called an Ephrati was someone from the tribe of Ephraim. An Ephrati or Ephrati is someone from the tribe of Ephraim in Hebrew. Also the word connoted, the word meant an aristocrat. And the Midrashim and commentators say that there was something aristocratic about the very tribe of Ephraim. They had this aristocratic principle. And we find aristocracy even now in England, to be a lord, to have a title and so on, royalty and all of that. People laugh at it, people mock at it, but it means something to everyone, especially in England, where we do find a significant input from Ephraim. And how do we find this amongst ordinary people? We find it when people try and place you in a hierarchy. And I find this quite often when I speak to people from Britain, to people from Australia, and I find it much less when I speak to people from America or from France. And people from other places, from Israel, they have other ways of defining people, other ways of declaring what their turf is or how they're going to relate to you. But someone from Ephraim, he will try and put you in a hierarchy. He will say, of course you're this and that, and whereas I am that and this. Therefore, it is implied, it is very seldom said expressly, but it is very strongly implied, or it is written there between the lines, since you're in such and such a position relative to myself, you should relate to me in such and such a manner. And the way you deal with this, you have to say more or less, it's true that I'm this and that, according in relation to you on that and that principle, but from this, that and the other, I am on a higher level, on a different level, on equal plane to you. Therefore you should adjust your ranking of me in accordance. So there's always this struggle to rank someone else, and perhaps we too, or you too, have this tendency, when you see someone, you try and figure out, how is this person to be placed relative to myself, and what rank am I going to place him? Is he better than I? Do I owe him something? Should I defer to him? Does he owe me something? Is there something about him that I should expect him to defer to me because of? That is an Ephraimite characteristic. It might be, it's also a universal one, but amongst the Ephraimites it is more universal. It is, they've even got it down to a fine art. It is much more strongly emphasized and entrenched than it is in other peoples. And this is reflected in their name, Ephraim, an aristocrat, someone from the tribe of Ephraim, someone whom aristocracy or rank or status has importance. Another point is that we find amongst the Ephraimites a tendency to violence. They are much less violent than the Americans. They have less crime. They are peaceful in that respect, but the violence is there. It can come to expression in war, or in under pressure, or in the way they express themselves, or in their politics, or how they think of other people. And even the little things. Do you prefer crime movies or romantic movies, or movies with sex or comedies and so on? So someone who is more inclined towards crime and the like, that is an Ephraimite characteristic. Violence and even cruelty to some degree, that is an attribute of Ephraim. I'm saying that we all have to be good. We all have problems. There's a Dr. Hyde, a Mr. Hyde, and a Dr. Jekyll attribute, or is it the opposite way around? There is a Dr. Hyde and a Mr. Jekyll attribute aspect to all of us. So if you are going to be bad, or if you go off the track, what direction are you liable to fall in? Think of it, because this too tells us something about the people. Tells us what tribes they may or may not belong to. And Isaiah chapter 6 says, Gilead is a city of evildoers and defiled with blood, and so the company of priests murdered in the way to Shechem. And he goes on in verse 10, it says, I've seen a horrible thing in the house of Israel. It's the harlotry of Ephraim. Israel is defiled. So we see this indication, a tendency towards adultery and towards violence in Ephraim. Is one attribute of Ephraim, and we'll go through it, and we'll bring up other additional attributes, and we'll see what the overall picture created by these attributes gives us. Thank you. May the Lord God of Israel bless you.